You have faced many difficult procedures up to this stage in your training, but I dare say you haven't done anything quite as challenging as a hand-flown ILS. If you can perfect this procedure, you've really made it as far as your flying technique is concerned. Not only will you be hand-flying this ILS into Toronto, Canada, but you'll be performing cold weather operations as well. It's snowing heavily, the visibility is low, and the stress level is high. Print out your Navigraph chart for the ILS 33 left, and let's see if you can do this. As you may remember from the anti-ice section, we need to turn on anti-ice when we have visible moisture and the outside air temperature is 10 degrees Celsius or below. Well, as you can see here on the ICAS, we're well below that. Let's get to the overhead and turn on that anti-ice. First, nacelle anti-ice, then wing anti-ice. This effectively gets hot bleed air to these areas to protect you from ice. You can see on the ICAS that all nacelle and wing anti-ice units are on. It's important to verify information after you have engaged it, just as you would with any other system. Let's get our first slowdown done before we start the airbag checklist. Simply get to flaps 1 plus 10 knots. As usual, verify your speed comes down, and the flaps indication is correct on the ICAS. Select Verify. It's the only way to fly. First in the airbag checklist is ATIS. Your ATIS today is as follows. Information X-ray, 1845 Zulu. Weather, wind calm, visibility 1 mile. Overcast 200. Mist, snow. Altimeter 28.65. Notice to airmen. Unplowed snow present on runway. Braking action reported as normal. Advise controller on initial contact you have information X-ray. It's time to move along in the airbag. As always, we'll do the T install. Click initialization and reference. Copy to right in the scratch pad by selecting, then paste by hitting 4 right. Moving along the T, we come to departure arrivals. Hit next page until you find ILS 33 left. It's on page 2. Go ahead and select it. Next, the transition of ICMEX, which we are headed toward. Select this to right. We see the white lines on our ND. Let's go ahead and activate these changes with the execute key. Easy enough, all dialed in. Moving through the T again, we get to the legs page. Jump through and clear any existing discontinuities. No problem here, go to the NavRad page. Cross-check our ILS frequency and course between the FMC and the chart. This frequency and course was automatically selected when we loaded the approach. The only manual entry you need to do is that of Queensway NDB, seen here. Type in 368 and drop it in 3 left. Simple as that. Now set your decision height, as seen on the chart, of 255 feet. This is done from the EFIS panel, in case you forgot. As we are nearly at the end of this turn, I'm going to get to flaps 10 plus 10 knots. This selection is up to the pilot flying, based on the feel of the situation. This is something that is learned, not taught. In the future, find what you are most comfortable with, and just go with that. We are now turning inbound toward the final approach course. Before we reach glide slope intercept, we will disconnect the autopilot and take her in. R for radios. Let's just identify our ILS. Bring up the comm panel and turn on the mic. Once you hear the tone, turn it to marker. At this stage, we are assuming that you have done the brief, the altimeters are set, and the go-around thrust setting is active, as seen on the ICAS. This is the bag in airbag. You have a few final moments before things get extremely busy to make sure all of this is set. Let's now perform the approach descent checklist, which is part of the bag in airbag. Bring out your checklist if you haven't already. ICAS, recall, no errors, cancel. Airspeed, go to the FMC initialization reference page and verify this is set. Auto brakes will set to a level of 3. Approach descent checklist complete. Alright, Captain. Take a few deep breaths. It's about to get really busy. The glide slope is active and moving its way down. Although it is still above us, you'll need to be vigilant in watching out for it. At the lower dot, you'll put the gear down and get to flaps 20 plus 10 knots. As soon as the marker touches the center glide slope indication, you'll get to final flaps and final landing speed. Get to flaps 20 plus 10 knots now and put the gear down. Wait for the marker to come centered. Before we get to final flaps and landing speed, let's take over control of the aircraft. Get your hands on that yoke and then disconnect the autopilot. You're now in control. I'm going to throw a curveball at you right off the bat. While you're getting comfortable, get to final landing flaps and landing speed. Keep in mind that you are required to fly the needles on the PFD, and you must only use the ND as a means of greater situational awareness. As you can see, the localizer course is already off to my left because the GPS course doesn't match the ILS course. This is the reason for using the ILS needles only. From here on out, the only thing we are going to do is fly the airplane, so let me give you some tips on how to correct for localizer deflections and glide slope deflections. The ILS is an extremely sensitive approach. The further you get down the approach path, the more sensitive it becomes. Therefore, movements that would work right now to get on track would be much more sensitive in the coming few minutes. We can sum this up into 2 general rules. 1. Get on track as early as possible, and 2. Make small corrections. As was mentioned, the localizer course is off to my left. I'm not going to dive to the left to get on that course, because I'm honestly not sure I'd be able to get the approach stabilized after such a maneuver. Rather, I've simply made a course correction of but a few degrees, and I'll hold it level until I get back on track. Throughout my scan, I'll monitor this. In relation to heading and the localizer course is the bank scale. Keep your banks under 10 degrees, and when you're getting closer, under 5 degrees. Let's discuss the glide slope now. Your glide slope is directly related to the vertical speed. In fact, for a particular speed, there is a vertical speed that would be partnered with it to get your 3-degree glide slope. On the 747-400, this will normally range from 700 to 800, as you saw in the non-precision approaches. Say you're a little too high on the glide slope. A simple correction would be to increase your vertical speed to say 1,000 feet per minute rather than 800. Once you get back on track with the glide slope, go ahead and get back to the original vertical speed. Conversely, if you are too low, just reduce to say 600 feet per minute until you get it back, then return to your original vertical speed. Now that you know how to handle these situations, you can continue to scan and correct accordingly. At this point, you may want to keep the window in your scan, because we are under 1,000 feet to go until the runway. Our decision height is coming up really quick. See the approach lights? You're done with the scan. We're cleared to continue below minimums. Focus, get on track, and maintain control of the situation. Because of the snow and slush on the runway, you must really plant the wheels into the runway. No greasers in these conditions.
100.
At 50 feet, disconnect auto throttle.
50, 40.
Flare at 30 to 20 feet, but not as much as you usually would. Once down, bring in reverse thrust, and verify auto brakes are assisting in the slowdown. At 80 knots, bring out reverse thrust.
80 knots.
Maintain directional control, and assure you aren't placing the aircraft in danger of skidding off the runway. You'll need extra safety margins in these situations. Take over braking on your own, and vacate the runway. Great job, Captain.